Hey everyone, in this lecture we're going to be talking about what it means to convert from one bell curve to another bell curve, in which neither one is the standard normal distribution. So let's get started. So I want to get a really good setup of what I mean when I say converting between bell curves. This is actually a really widely applicable concept, and here's a really good application. So suppose you get an SAT score of 1200. What ACT score would that correspond to? All right, we're going to head over to the computer and we're going to work through this example together, so I'll see you there.
So as the problem suggested, we have an SAT score of 1,200, and we're trying to figure out what ACT score is that. And this is a very common question that a lot of students ask, because these two tests are very common college prep tests. And so you have, someone who has an SAT score that's really high, and you have someone who has a high ACT score, but they can't communicate to each other because the way the scores work are totally different. And so you can't quite tell which one's better because the number systems are totally different. But this problem will show you how to tell which score is better. In particular, we have an SAT score of 1,200, and we're trying to figure out what that corresponding ACT score is. Now, again, we are not pros at SAT scores. We're not pros at IQ scores. We're not pros at ACT scores. So, we are going to need to create a totally separate problem here. And we're going to take a complete left turn, or I guess in this case, a right turn. And we are going to look at the z-score bell curve, which has an average of 0 and a standard deviation of 1. Now, that means that the middle is 0. And I'm trying to figure out what this IQ score, this SAT score corresponds to. So we have this 1200, and I need to figure out what does that correspond to on here. So what is this z-score that we're looking at? Now, I know I can find this using the formula z equals x minus mu divided by sigma. That allows me to convert from any variable like SAT to the z-score bell curve, or vice versa. In this case, I'm given my SAT score. I'm trying to find the z-score. So my z would be 1200 minus 1000 all over 200, which, by the way, is just 1. So this z-score is 1. Okay, so now we found the corresponding z-score to an SAT score of 1200. Now what we're going to do is I'm going to erase some of this so that we can see a little bit more clearly here. So now we're trying to figure out what ACT score corresponds to a z-score of 1. So we know what the corresponding z-score is to this ACT score, and we're trying to figure out what the ACT score is. So in this case, we need to do z equals, well, we know our z-score. It is 1. That is what our z-score is. And we're trying to figure out what the ACT score is. Now, the average in this case is 21. And the standard deviation is 5. So we need to do some algebra to figure out what x is. So I'm going to take out my calculator. I'm going to do 1 times 5, and then I'm going to add 21. And I get x equals 25. And so that is my ACT score, 25. So an SAT score of 1200 is equivalent to an ACT score of 25. So I hope that helps. Thank you guys so much, and I'll see you guys in the next lecture.